We started this hike in April 19th. My wife and I drove the fifth wheel over to Gatlinburg, and she was going to shop while I hiked. She'd be my Uber driver. Try to do away with some of the problems I had the previous year getting from place to place. Anyway, we dropped off a food box at Fontana Lodge. Then we went over to NOC, had lunch. I started hiking around 2 o'clock. Got to Sassafras Gap Shelter. It was just packed. Not only the shelter, but the whole hillside. And I'm not sure there was a decent place to put my tent anyway, even if there hadn't been 2 or 3 dozen people there. After about 15 or 20 minutes trying to make it work, I just gave up. Hiked another mile and a half up to Chia Bald, and it was beautiful up there. There was me and one guy from Germany. Had the whole place to ourselves. Got to sit on a log and eat dinner and watch the sunset, and the next morning I got to watch the sunrise there on top. The next day, hiked 19 and a half miles to Fontana Village. I got there. There was no room at the inn, so to speak. There was some bikers rally or convention. So I got my food box and got over to Fontana Hilton. That place was packed. Had to sleep up the hill a little ways on one of those concrete pads and use rocks to secure the lines on my tent. And the guys down at the Hilton were noisy all night, drinking beer and eating pizza. Anyway, I got a shower and washed some clothes there, let them dry overnight. That seemed to work out well. Next day, entered the Smokies. Got as far as Spence Field. It was interesting. There were some locals there. I guess they hiked the side trails. Anyway, they were handing out drinks, hard liquor, and they had, baguettes, the long French bread, had cheese. I forgot what else they had, but I was fortunate. Shelter was full, so I didn't have to sleep in that smoke-filled. It was real smoky from the fireplace, so I pitched my tent down a little flat area, which had a hitching post. I guess people used to have pack animals, or maybe they used to allow horses on the trail. I don't know. Well, this is Monday morning. I'm sorry, Sunday morning, the 22nd. Way off in the distance there. Oh dear. Big ass hill to start the day with. The sun just peeked out for the first time this morning. Anyway, it's windy up here. Well, here we are, the last mile or two, probably the last flat area before I start this nasty climb up Klingman's Dome. I keep thinking I'm going to be there already, so count my blessings. More of this flat stuff between hills, more mountains. I was hoping you could hear the wind, but it died down. Looks like a pine forest anywhere. The next day, the goal was to get to Clingman's Dome. I thought it was going to be a challenge, and it was. It was 18 miles, I believe, uphill in the bad weather. I was trying to get up there because there was supposed to be 3 or 4 days of just terrible rain, and that way I could have my wife pick me up there at the parking lot. And that worked out. Had some sideways fog and rain, lots of wind, but she was a little late getting there due to the weather, and the road was treacherous. I ended up waiting in the handicap restroom as it had a good view of the parking lot. A couple days later, I slack packed from Clingman's Dome down to Newfound Gap, where she went to a museum over on the other side of the mountain there at the Cherokee Nation. They had a museum. And then another day or two later, I resumed the hike. I went 16 miles to Tri-Knob Shelter. It was probably one of the worst nights I had on the trail, just because the place was small and not many areas to put a tent. So I was sleeping, clinging onto the hillside all night. Had I known, just up the trail 100 yards or so, there was another one of those flat areas with a hitching post. I could have slept up there because the shelter was full. But anyway, the last day in the Smokies was 17 miles down to I-40. Was the Davenport Gap, I believe, is the last shelter. It had like 4 ups and downs, and then it was 7 miles downhill all the way to I-40. I passed people going up, but I was glad I wasn't one of them going southbound. It didn't look like fun at all. I got there on time. The wife was a little late. On the way, I stopped at a place and had one of the best views ever of my time on the trail, before and since. Just phenomenal views. Met a young man. He had a sad tale. I don't know how bad he was off really, but I noticed he was wearing 2 different hiking shoes. So I shared some food with him. And that was about 100 miles of hiking, so I'll leave it there.
whole thing. You'll just be that little speck.